I used to just not like the way that people treated voucher holders. Just because this young lady has a voucher, through the experience, people judge them. And I'm not big on like judging people because I was judged through my experiences.
All right, we're live. Thank you for joining us on this purpose-driven investment podcast. With me, Shinyi Taosha, I'm your host, and this is a podcast that we learn from each other, talk strategy, and create return that matter. Today, I'm very honored to have my special guest, Felix Buchanan, who joined us today. How are you doing today, Phoenix?
I'm awesome, Sheenie. How you doing today?
Very good. I am so lucky to have a chance to meet you recently. I knew you because it was kind of through another mutual friend of ours, and in the process trying to find a new meetup place for my local meetup in Maryland, and you were introduced to me through him. So let's dive into, trying to help our audience to know who you are, and then we can dive into what we wanted to talk about. But before we do that, I usually like to give our guests the opportunity to kind of introduce themselves to our audience. So could you give us maybe like a few minutes to kind of discuss where you came from, how you started, and where you are right now?
Absolutely. So my name is Felix Buchanan Sr. because there's a senior and a junior. I've been involved in real estate over 20 years. My first job ever in life at 14 was actually rehabbing properties where, most people work at McDonald's or something like that. I'm originally from New York. I moved to Baltimore to go to high school. I went to Randallstown High School, played football, basketball, men of excellence, chess. I went to college, Waynesburg College for mechanical engineering. Go figure that as far as the years went on, I got involved in real estate. And once I got involved in real estate, there was no turning back. I didn't want to do anything else. I'm always excited to talk about real estate. There's never a time that I don't want to. So that was the journey. I got involved in it because I was working at Verizon. I was a young knucklehead, involved in the streets, different things. I worked at Verizon for a while and I got in some trouble, and I just got to a point that I was just like, you know what? I'm done with this regular 9 to 5 thing. I'm just going to go out there. I'm going to go get my real estate license, which I did. I studied to get my license, got my license in 2005. Didn't know what I was doing. I was the black sheep for my family. I come from a Caribbean background. My mother's from Trinidad. My father's from Panama. My father's father is French. So I have Guyanese. I call myself an island mutt, and most people laugh at that. So obviously the background of Caribbean people, they work hard. They instilled a lot of that into us. So what I didn't never get was because I played sports, I was a, big prospect of an athlete, also had great grades. They could never come to join or plays or watch games or any of that. And I played two sports. So it's like, they just didn't get the moment. So as far as I just never wanted my children to have to experience what I went through not being there, and getting into real estate, being an entrepreneur was like, hey, this gives me the opportunity to be able to go to plays, games, do whatever. I kind of control my own schedule. But obviously, in the beginning, you learn that there's a road, a path of process, which luckily I love the process and I enjoy the process because the process is what really gives you the ins and outs, the different intricals. You're going to meet people, you're going to network. It's going to teach you about what you really need to do, especially if you get taught by the right people, which is really the bigger direction for me that I went kind of outside of my comfort zone from the very beginning to learn the things that I needed to learn about real estate. Again, it wasn't easy because just being a young black kid, especially in those times, it wasn't the thing for people to be involved in real estate. So I really was just kind of stepping out there. My mother was just like, oh, you're dumb. Why is it that you want to go do that? You got a great job. You're going to get a pension, Social Security. And to me, I just felt like it was a time sucker, even though, I was making more money than I should have at that age, working because of the talent and skills that I'd already had. I just jumped out there and started doing real estate. So over the course of time, just getting into investments, we had a property on Bentlow Street. That was like my first rehab. You going in there like, oh, I could do everything. I'm demoing. I really don't
Right,
know what I'm
swing the
doing.
hammer.
Right. Just
I'll do
I
everything I
enjoyed
can.
Right. I enjoyed that part of it. I really love rehabbing properties. I love taking properties from looking like crap and building them
Turn it
to
around.
looking
Yeah.
right. And then being able to provide homes for people, being able to make it affordable because majority of all of my fix and flips, I sold them for less than what I could have because I could have made another 10 or $15,000.
Right.
However, the goal is for us to make money, but at the same time make things beneficial for other people.
I so appreciate you saying that. I think that's what drew me to you. I wanted to invite to my podcast because, I mean, of course, we all want to make money, right? We're in this business to make money. Otherwise, any business wouldn't have survived without any profit. So you have to generate profit, but you obviously care for your people, also care for the
Yes.
tenant. And it's a really great mission for you to focus on provide affordable housing. I think that's why you're so successful because anybody in this space will realize there's a fine line between the landlord just care about making more money versus the landlord care about providing quality housing, right? You've obviously fallen to the second one. I think that's what shaped you to who you are today. You kind of explained that you came from the island country and you're the black sheep of the family. You also kind of got into the trouble in the beginning. Let's
Mhm.
dive into that a little bit because I think
Sure.
there's some lesson learned there that made you decide, I need to get back into the right track.
I was in situation where I was kidnapped. Between that and just getting locked up in general, spending time sitting down kind of molded me because with getting locked up, that's when I started reading more. Math was always my thing. I read enough just to make sure that I can get great grades because I like having 80s and above. So the reading that part is what really started the journey, kind of really learning. I started with Donald Goines books and then I kind of moved into books about just entrepreneurship. These are the things that we can do. And especially coming from a background of hustling and being able to make all this money in, shorter periods of time was like key. The other key component is just that I always wanted to be involved in real estate, just wanting to gain that knowledge. And then also, like I mentioned before, just being kidnapped, that also kind of really woke me up. I was already in the process of kind of cleaning things out, cleaning my closets out, getting more into real estate. And then that situation happened. I was already moving in the direction of, changing my life, but to experience something of that nature growing up without a dad. My son was 9 months. I have another son that at the time he was 5, 6 years old. He's not my biological son, but that's my son. It really kind of just made me feel like getting out of the situation was here's just yet another chance from different things that had happened, just being in the streets that could have taken me away, or I could have been locked up for years. I could have been dead, just so many different things that transpired. But through it all, at that point, to say, hey, it's time to really make a change. Like, if there's no other sign that I could have, God just saved you from being kidnapped, where 85% of the people that are in those situations don't come back alive.
And don't survive. So you kind of start seeing the real estate, the entrepreneurship as your lifeline, basically out of the environment you're in. Let's go back to the very first time when you decided to buy. You mentioned about you got this house and you just like jumping, I want to do everything. Was that your first rental house? How did you get that house?
That one was the first flip. So there was an investor that at the time me getting involved in real estate, I understood the investment side of things. I'd already purchased two properties, but I did it with someone. This one I was doing it like with someone, but I was more like the lead. I'm not, behind anyone. No one else is giving me any information. I'm kind of taking the lead on things. The investor, I was able to structure the deal that she gave me a good portion of the money to rehab. So I didn't even have to borrow but so much money from the hard money lenders, which at that time I had a partner that he was fronting the money for us to put up to rehab it. And we were gonna go. So yeah, got in there, started tearing stuff up and, ripping stuff out and like, all right, partially like how I'm gonna put this back together. And even though I had experience, I didn't have the full wealth of knowledge that obviously I have today. So it was just that one, we didn't even complete it, to be honest with you. That one failed. However, that was just one of the times of things that the early experiences that, regardless of the failure, it still pushed me to be like, I'm still gonna make out better having investments than I will just strictly being a real estate agent and selling properties. I never really got into being an agent that I was like, yo, I'm gonna be this magnificent agent. It was more to kind of hone my skills better at being an investor.
I think that's such such a very iconic trait for being a very successful entrepreneur because when you actually fail, we don't consider that as a failure. It's just a lesson learned. It's the difference between if you're just gonna give up right then or you're just gonna move forward and learn from it and just move forward. And now you obviously move forward from that and you have many more after that, right?
Yes, yes, indeed.
Once you start having very sizable rental portfolio, I've noticed that you mentioned you will specifically decide to rent it out to those voucher tenant, right? So
Yes.
talk to us about why you decide to do that. What made you decide to work with those programs? Then we can kind of dive into what those programs about.
It was multiple reasons. One, there was a point in time in life that I moved 13 times in 10 years. So that experience was in itself just not the best experience. You got to pay all these application fees, you got to give all these deposits. And then in some of those cases back then, you wasn't getting your money back. So you're just constantly piling up. You might spend $2,000, $3,000 just in application fees before you actually get into a property. So that was one reason. I used to just not like the way that people treated voucher holders. Just because this young lady has a voucher, through the experience, people judge them. And I'm not big on like judging people because I was judged through my experiences, even though I had great jobs, never had any trouble. And when I got locked up, it just happened to be something big. People judged me based off of that. And I was like, the character of who I am as an individual didn't change. I just, I'm involved in these things. So naturally, people think that voucher holders are terrible tenants. And I was like, well, let me see how I can do this for myself. And I just came up with a process where, first and foremost, I screen you before I even put you in the property. What do I mean by that? I'm going to do an application. I'm going to do your credit, criminal, previous living history, rental, and employment verification. With me doing that, now, it then better helps me place them because every landlord isn't going to require a 650 credit score. They have to have this clean record. It put it to help me put them in a position that, okay, well, I can place you with the landlord that best fits your criteria by doing this in the beginning. It then better helps me allow that there are going to be landlords that are going to give people second chances. They're going to be landlords that, hey, they require this. But what it lets me know is that now I know exactly where to put you based off of that. So with kind of diving more into the process, I connected with a friend of mine's that she worked at the voucher program. One of them called BRHP, used to be
Right.
formerly known as MBQ,
I think that's the Baltimore
Baltimore
Regional
Regional
Housing
Housing
Partnership.
Program. Yeah,
That's
partnership.
actually yeah, that's actually my very first voucher tenant. I just love her. She is so we
Yes.
can talk about my experience, but I like to hear your experience first. I love how you say, well, I don't like to be judged because that I'm willing to give the people a chance that they usually got receive judgment from other people because they have the voucher tenant. Maybe that's giving a little profile, right? That's describe all these people. How did they get their voucher and usually how long they have to wait for these?
It just depends. You can get a voucher as low as a year, which means that you had some type of emergency situation. If you get a voucher in a year or less, that means that you went through some type of hardship, some real emergency in life, and they felt as though that this is how they're going to help you to move. But typically, the longest that I've seen somebody be on a voucher, I want to say like 18, 20 years being on the waiting list.
Wow. Just be on a waiting list, right? To
Just
to
to
get
be on
to
the waiting
waiting
list.
list. They have to be income qualified first, and obviously, and then they have to then apply, and it could take years for them to get
Years.
that voucher. And wow, they're just
Yes.
waiting and waiting and waiting. I remember one of my pharmacy friend who, when I used to be in pharmacy school, he was actually using the voucher to stay in an apartment nearby. That was the voucher program, right? So in
Mhm.
my mind, I never thought about, oh wow, it could be just my friend who's on the list for years. And he was telling me, yeah, he was on the list for almost 5 years to finally get the
Yes.
voucher. Yeah. So that really set things into perspective. And then I really glad that you decide to not to judge these people, just kind of screen them just like the regular
Anybody else?
tenant who pay cash or whatever income they might be able to produce, right?
Mhm. But then making sure you match them with the landlord that will take them, because back then there were a lot of landlords that people don't know that in Maryland there's a law that you really cannot discriminate against a voucher holder. The only
Correct.
thing that didn't do, because there was a point in time that there were some people that rented properties that they pressed the leverage, because you cannot tell a voucher holder just like you can't tell a handicapped person. you actually can't tell them no. The only way that you can legitimately and legally tell them that you are not accepting them is if you deny their application. That's it. Because they didn't meet a certain level of a criteria. Otherwise, you have to accept them. And you can press the issue. Is just that you're gonna piss a lot of people off, obviously. But it wouldn't matter. It's gonna be like, hey, you still getting your money in rent. And that's the bigger guarantee with it. Like you screen them properly. They're gonna be landlords that's gonna give them a second chance. They're gonna be landlords that kind of understand how they talk because every voucher holder, you're not gonna understand them. But the thing that I also experienced was majority of them, because they might have filled out for this at 16, 17, 18 years old. Well, who are they as individuals today when they actually have the voucher? I have had many of them, at least four of them I helped buy houses that were voucher programs. Years ago also, even though only one of them took advantage of this, the voucher programs used to help you buy a house. Both of them, Section 8,
Really?
BRHP, Baltimore County Housing Choice Voucher Program. They're supposed to be bringing it back, but they used to have a program inside of the voucher program that they helped you buy a house.
So they put down how did they help them? Like, put down down payment or,
Yes,
like
they help them with the down payment
oh,
money.
down
They
payment
help them
assistance.
with monthly payments. They help
Mhm.
them in multiple ways. Like that program was super beneficial. And
Wow.
then there's a difference in programs. So in my experience, Section 8, I don't care where you go. Again, it's based off of screening the tenants. Luckily for
Right.
me, in all my years, I've had one bad Section 8 tenant. All the rest of them were always working.
Out of
If
how
they
many? One bad tenant out of how many? Give us a ballpark.
300 tenants.
Uh-huh. So that's just kind of, I want to highlight that we shouldn't just treat any voucher tenant as a bad tenant. It's all about how well you screen them. Like,
Yep.
like the background check, the credit check, the income. You cannot discriminate income just because they use voucher as a paying source. Other than that, you can screen them just like any other tenant, except
Yes.
for the income requirement, which is they bring the vouchers. I don't look at their income. Yeah, one out of 300, huh?
Yes.
that's
And to be
that's
honest,
pretty
one of my
good.
best tenants, he was a non-voucher holder tenant, but he had a 435 credit score. He had 13 charges, and he was one of my best top 2 tenants that when he
Mm,
left, even though he had a dog for 6 months, he wasn't supposed to have a dog, but he didn't know that. And the owners asked him to remove it. He removed it. We only had to write down 1 counter. Everything was clean. So again, coming from being a felon at 20 years old and people judging you, look at my work history. Like, look at who, just because I got locked up, that kind of put a certain level of chip on my shoulder. It did when I couldn't find somewhere to live, renting. All of these things that are created in life come from some type of pain point. And I just don't look at it like just because this person a voucher. I grew up with some of my cousins and aunts being voucher holders where you can go with the stereotype that, yeah, they probably did some of the things that the bad Section 8 tenants would do. However, there was some that here's the good thing. So if you judge everybody, then you never know which one of them in which they're gonna get. And like I said, knock on wood, thank God, I've just never had any issues. Like a lot of these girls still call me today because of the fact that I might have put them in other owners' properties, not just mine, because I only can buy but so many
yeah,
properties.
you filled
And when I
out. You
did
got
right, when I don't
right.
have no properties, I get to work with other owners, and
Right.
these owners call me and be upset when these girls want to leave. Like really, like they be like, please, can you talk her? Can you ask her if she wants to stay? Like maybe another 2 years. Give me time to find another tenant. And I be like, well, I mean, I can't guarantee that. If she's ready to go, she's ready to go. I'm not gonna persuade her.
Right.
I'll just find you
It's up
another
to
tenant.
them. What does the process look like working with these type of programs? A lot of time we heard from a lot of landlord the number one reason they decide not to take voucher is because this process take a while, at least a month or two. You're gonna have some vacancies waiting for the voucher program to approve and then send you the first check, right? What does that look like?
I tell people realistically, that's really on the owner and how fast they get the paperwork. So typically, any owners that I deal with or any of my properties, because I've dealt with them so long, you make sure you do an inspection yourself because it's very rarely that I've had an inspector come to my property and it's not together where I got to worry about them coming back out to do anything because then now that further delays the process. So making sure all the waters are running, toilets, sinks, showers, there's no clogs, making sure that there's no leaks, no drips, making sure that all your vanities or your cabinets are secure to where it's supposed to be. There's no shaking, no movement. The countertops are completely secure, making sure that the toilets are secure. Because you would be surprised that you
The
go sit on the
toilet's
toilet and
moving.
the toilet doing a shaking. You like, yo,
Right.
who's supposed to sit down and use the bathroom and the toilet is shaking? Like,
Right.
heck no. I don't want to sit down no more. Making sure that the mirrors are secure, all your doors for every bedroom, all the locks work, making sure that the door, when you pull on it, the door just doesn't pull open because that defeats the purpose of having the lock. All bathrooms, all entry doors have locks, locks that work. Making sure the flooring, nothing you can trip over. All the carpet, there's no, those seams and you tripping over the carpet. I mean, think about it. If you were to walk through a property and you trip in and you have these things, then would you want to stay there? Like, we got to think about it, not just because it's a voucher holder and you think that this girl is of this standard. I had multiple girls, one in particular. She had a 735 credit score and she was a half a semester away from getting her master's, right? So you could judge them, but she had been on the waiting list for 18 years. And she
Right.
looked at it like, where I'm at in life right now, I got school, I got dissertations. Why wouldn't I take this voucher to take a little bit of pressure off me so that I get to focus on this? And, she had a business, she bartended. I mean, if you don't get to know them, then you're going to judge them based off of the stories. Are they horror stories? Have I seen them? Absolutely. The benefit for me is that God blessed me that I just didn't have to deal with them from my personal experience, in the sense of they were tenants for my property. Have I dealt with them with owners and had to go in there and clean out properties, gut everything when they were done? Absolutely. But if you screen them properly, you check to see certain things. And just because they may have these negative items and stuff on their reports and stuff, talking to them, a lot of it is just, I'll call and ask them these certain questions. I tell them, don't lie to me, because of the fact that I know how to read the credit report. I know how to read the criminal report because I know what this certain criminal activity would be. I'd be like, yo, explain it to me. If they explained it enough to me themselves, then guess what? I can now explain it to the owner. When the owner calls me and say, hey, Felix, what does this mean? Then Felix can explain it. To me, it's just you build that level of rapport in the beginning with them so that you have a full understanding of whom it is that you're dealing with, just like when we connected. And I didn't know you from Adam, but we spent the next 6 hours together because it was just like, hey, this
We're
ain't enough
just like, let's
time.
grab a lunch. Hey, I
Right,
like how you're saying, let's go grab, sit down, talk more.
right.
So I like to ask you a little bit more how you screen them. I think this is where most people trip. So what are the few common questions you ask them, and give us some example of like how they respond this way versus that way? Then you can kind of gauge like, yeah, these are the good tenant and these are the bad tenant.
Typically, because I'm doing all the screening, I look at things. So let's just give an example that I seen something on a credit report or I seen something as far as a criminal charge. So then I'll call them and ask them, hey, I had a couple girls and they're females, assault, fresh assault charges. So, what is this about? What is this in reference to? Some of them would be, hey, well, I got in a fight with their particular children's fathers, some girlfriend, and things got out of hand. And this is what happened and this is what it is. Based off of me looking at the charges and understanding what each code means and things of that nature, if I can trust you to be honest about the things in life that you would probably not feel the best about, or you did it and you like, man, I shouldn't have did it. Some of them like, man, I wish I could punch in the mouth again. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm not going to judge you or gauge you based off of a personal situation. However, though, I'm going to listen to how you handle the situation, right? So
That
that's
is
the
great
bigger
point.
difference.
Yeah.
Right,
How'd
because
you handle that? Yes.
how'd you handle the situation? Because being a young knucklehead, I know that emotions run high. The things that people say, people are going to say these certain things because of X, Y, and Z. So you're not judging them strictly based off of, you want to look at the whole picture. What type of person, like me talking to you right now, like how are you coming off? What type of verbiage are you using? What type of help? All of those different things matter within the conversation when they filling out their application, because there are parts within the application that I ask the questions in the beginning. So I do what's called the rental intake sheet even before I do the application. So I ask them about how many bedrooms, bathroom, what voucher holder it is, how many rooms is their voucher, because to go back, you get anywhere from a 1 bedroom to a 5 bedroom voucher. Each one of these programs, there's a price that goes with it. So because I was so locked into the process, I already knew without having to worry about them telling me, oh, I got a 3 bedroom voucher so I could afford a property up to 1800. Well, I already know. And then depending on whether you're on the census tract or not, which is a BRHP thing versus Section 8, then people want to port from Baltimore City to Baltimore County, listening to where'd you live at before. I remember dealing with Dominion and they used to do checks I'm not coming to your house to check because you could clean your house up in the moment before I get there to just make sure it look good. If I met with them, I'd look at their cars. Let me see what the inside of your car look like. How does your child look? You know, when you brought your child out your car, is they pamper look like it ain't been changed in 5 days? You know, that's gonna
Right.
make a difference on how you're gonna treat the property as well. Because if you're treating this property, quote unquote, this is the child that you made. This is yours. So if you're gonna treat that messed up, then I can almost guarantee that you're gonna treat my
It's gonna
house
be
the
a
same.
messy. Yeah. So you screen them. It sounds like you have an intake phone. You usually do that over the phone, right?
Yeah, typically the intake sheet I'll call because so what happens with the intake sheet, you get a lot of these people who will say, I didn't tell you I wanted a 3 bedroom, or I didn't tell you that I wanted to live in this area. Well, on that first day when I did that and when I send them the application via email, they sign that sheet as well. So they keep a copy and I keep a copy so that when they say, oh, well, I told you I wanted to be in this area, I'll be like, well, remember that sheet that you pulled out? And I'll pull it out. And now what happens is when they come to me, they're going to be honest. But the word that spread it with me early was that because I understood the process, I really was able to place them. And because of my real estate, I utilized the leverage of other real estate agents' properties to provide housing for them.
I see. So you're kind of like a tenant placement manager. You have a network of houses. Some of them are your own, some of them are through their other landlord. You help matchmaking, basically fit the right
Correct.
one to the right house. So it sounds like you also meet them in person. Does that happen usually after the intake? And when they're interested in coming to take a look at the house, that's when you kind of meet them in person?
Yeah, so back in the day, of course, before COVID happened and we did every single thing, we didn't do everything online or you didn't do everything through that source. So for me, early on, they had to come to my office. So I got to see them because they would drop off their application fees. I met everybody,
I like
right? I was
that.
able to
Yeah.
see them all the time because they
How they
had to
show
bring
up.
me
Yeah.
exactly.
How they show up.
And
That's very important. Yeah.
yes. So that played a key component. Who came late? What was your reasoning for coming late? See, from reading the law of success teaches you that people is the whole picture. How they are when they happy, how they are when they sad, when they got money, when they don't got money, when they get good news, when they don't get good news. All of these things that people judge off the black and white, which again, that happened to me, and I didn't take too kindly to it because just like I'm quick and easy to talk about my record and the things that I had, there are people that's gonna shy away from that because they don't want people to know. And then when people find out, it's like, oh, well, they offended. Like, listen, this was a part of my life. This is what made me who I am today to be able to be the Felix Buchanan Sr. that I am. So I wouldn't take none of it away because those experiences, fortunately, God left me here to be able to share them and help people like I am today.
Wow, yeah, everything that came about that basically helped shape you who you are today, or the experience or the obstacle you have to go through, like all of that. I wanted to talk about numbers. So
Okay.
I think a lot of people will wanted to know, if they're ever interested about doing the voucher program. Let's just say if you're a really good landlord, you're on top of things, like when you accept the tenant, they screen and pass your screening. Let's talk about how the paperwork working in the program. You screen the tenant, you like them, and they fit your criteria, and there's a set of paperwork, right? You have to fill it out and then submit it to these various programs. Typically, what's the timeline look like when you submitted it until they schedule the inspection? If you didn't pass the inspection, there will be another inspection. But that just assume everything goes well. You submit your paperwork in time. They schedule an inspector until you move in the tenant. The first they move in. Like, what is the timeline we're looking at?
The fastest I ever got a tenant in the property probably was like a week and a half.
What?
The
What?
voucher holder program, yes.
Is
Because
it
they would
because it's special situation they will have to schedule really fast? Because mine is like a month. I was really proud of myself. I literally like submit on the same day. I was like literally walk out of there. So I like you. Okay, let's submit your application. I freaking on the same day. But it also like
well,
took us like a month.
that's the average. I've dealt with emergency people.
Right,
So based off of your
emergency.
question, I
Mhm.
had to be fair in the sense that emergencies, I've had them done as fast as a week and a half because
You know,
that's filed the property, paperwork in, they come do the inspection almost immediately. Soon as that inspection passed, bang, we're moving forward. But it typically takes about 30 days because initially you
Okay.
have to do the HAP contract, which is
Right.
between you and the voucher
Yep.
program or the property manager and the voucher program, but still typically the owner. Once you do the HAP contract, they come through, they do the inspection because the application process. So, and there are differences. If you're a BRHP first year, then there's this thing called the census tract that you have to live on the census tract for at least 2 years before they allow you to move off of the census tract. The other thing about being on the census tract is that they're going to pay the security deposit for that first year tenant. So she only has to pay whatever her portion of the rent is. So again, if it's Section 8, it's different. Section 8 doesn't have that set up. So Section 8, they are responsible for their security deposit unless it's some type of special circumstance, which is very few and far between. And then they allow them to go ahead and move forward.
So there's more flexible moving back and forth with the voucher. Does that mean they kind of lock into this place for at least 2 years?
So with the census tract, what it does is BRHP is different in the sense that the purpose of their program is to keep them in predominantly like the better neighborhoods, so to speak. And they want them there for 2 years because you're taking this young lady from the city, from her coming from a disturbed neighborhood to putting her, let's just say, because more than likely it's going to be the county, Baltimore County,
Right.
Anne Arundel County. It has to be a
Outskirt
county.
of the city, like a suburban area. Yes.
So with putting them there, you put them there, and then if they're there for 2 years, you want them to adjust to being in that area where now they don't want to leave. Where
Right.
now what's going to happen naturally? Better quality of life, better schools, better stores,
Better
better situation.
friends. Yeah. Better
Right.
situation. Yes.
Because previous years, they before only allowed it for a year. And what they found that was happening was that the girls were moving back to the neighborhoods that in which that they came from, which defeated the purpose of them wanting to keep the girls in those counties and have them develop and, obviously do better things and bring more value
Right.
to their children. Section 8 doesn't have such a thing. Section 8 is it could go wherever. They can move wherever they like. And then another difference in BRHP versus Section 8. So you could be a 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, or 4-bedroom voucher holder in BRHP. If you find a 2-bedroom that is equivalent to a 3-bedroom, they'll go ahead and let you move there. If you're a 3-bedroom voucher holder and you find a 4-bedroom, as long as it fits the price criteria, they'll let you move there, so on and so forth. Section 8 doesn't allow that. They only allow that in Baltimore County. In Baltimore City, if it's a 2-bedroom, you got to get a 2-bedroom. If it's a 3-bedroom, you got to get a 3-bedroom. So there's different things that when you're dealing with these different girls and they say certain things, if you don't know that, then you don't understand what it is that they're saying. And then now you're like, no, I can't do that. And now that girl is going to get upset and she's going to go somewhere else because in her mind, you just don't want her to have this place. All of the little different nuances with dealing with them, you understand how some of them think. Some of them don't think like that, but people that deal with these voucher holders think it's a one size fits all, and it's not. They are very unique. They have different things that they grew up with that their backgrounds are different, and they have triggers. They have triggers with trusting people because they came from backgrounds where the people that they depended on weren't dependable all the time. So
Right.
there's just so many nuances that as landlords that why I end up being a better fit to helping because as a property
You
manager,
understand them. Yeah. You
I understand.
understand
And they'll
them.
be like, well, look, or I've had it where, look, I'll pay you just to place them. I can manage them. I'm great from there. I just need you to place them in my property, do all of this legwork, and then I'm good to go from there. So it's been a mixture of I help them or I do the property management, and I'm still available now.
I'm so glad you explaining that the differences because that's something new for me because I didn't realize there was some sort of slight flexibility when we're taking on BRHP tenant versus regular Section 8 voucher program. So thank you for sharing that. If any landlords are interested in placing their tenant, accepting the voucher program, where could they find projected rent they will be able to get for their area? I believe there's like a place you can look up, right?
BRHP has, I think it's like brhpsearch.org. Section 8 doesn't have that. All the years that I've been working with them, I've never ever even seen something remotely close. I pretty much say that BRHP is the
My,
luxury of the voucher holders, to be honest
I
with you.
see.
That's how I label them. They just move different. They have some of the same inconsistencies, but they move a lot different as far as you being able to get certain things for these tenants and certain things that Section 8's just not going to do that It's the standard. Section 8 will let somebody tear your property up and move them into another property. Hands down, no problem. BRHP, you do that and they'll kick you off the voucher. So they have so many different regulations with BRHP that those girls not going to play because they don't want to lose their voucher. The Section 8 going to push the limit a bit because they know the program really only cares about the money more than they do the landlord.
I see.
BRHP's relationship is more, they know that they need the landlords because without the landlords, they don't have no property.
Well, that's my tenant. She's from BHP and she's been great. Background is coming as a single family mom, brought in two of her boys and moved out of the
Mhm.
city, decided to come to suburb and live in my property. They've been loving it. I get texts from her all the time. Hey, the school here is great. I walk my boy to the local shop. They make new friends. It was just so wonderful to hear that, as a housing provider, we were able to make such a life-changing decision to accept these tenants and give them a better future. That I'm sure that the boy will make new friends, right out of that
And then
environment they usually are. It's
And then
wonderful.
even to give you a step further, this is how I looked at it. You could actually better benefit in the sense that because you know she loves the area and you being an investor, you now can either rent to own that property to her or
Correct.
purchase another property that help her with her
Move
credit
in.
and
Yeah.
move her to
Yeah.
the next property and then fill that property with another BRHP tenant. So that was more so like how my mind works and the cycle that I seen in it. I'm still looking for funding enough that I can just buy a bulk of properties at one time, still
Right.
be able to pay the investor their money, but systematically set portfolios up in different ways.
Before we conclude this meeting, any lasting word that you could share with our audience that if you were to just start over again, what would be your recommendation? And I'm gonna tap in the end how people can find you.
I don't know that there's much differently other than financing, right? I think no matter what, as investors, the biggest part that we run into or the headache is getting the financing to be able to buy all these properties, which is part of some of the things that I work on now. The more properties investors buy naturally, the better. So if I was to start over, really, it's always going to be economy driven, right? Because right now, the economy requires that we would get more multi units. I would actually do that more now, mainly because understanding as an investor is going to give us better leverage. That you buy 2, 3 multi units, now you can buy 6, 7 single family homes, right? Because of the level of income that the
Right.
multi units are going to bring in. And you also can rent out to the voucher holders that way, where you're guaranteeing
Correct.
the
Yeah.
money. I know that the conversation is predominantly voucher holders, but then you have traveling nurses and other things that we spoke about. So starting over, I would just get 1 or 2 multi units, get them rented out so that I'm getting that higher level income. And then I would go after, more single family home products because at that point you're able to develop and build more of your money. And with the multi units, your mortgage might be $700, $800, and you're making 1,800. At the end of the day, if you have a multi unit, you're gonna get 3, 4 times that in rent. So
Right. You
instead of
10x that. Right.
correct.
Anything
So
you could do in a single family, you can also do that in a multifamily, but that's when it's the leverage become really fun because you kind of quadruple 10x it. Like you're not dealing with a one unit, you're dealing with 20, 50, 100 unit. That's when
yes.
when we scale. So if you don't mind, I'm gonna ask you to share your intake form. Maybe not all of it, just a couple of sample questions that we can share with our audience. Well, I'll just include a link there, and also tell us how we can find you and what kind of service you're offering nowadays for people to help them maybe place a tenant.
Oh, well, I do definitely do tenant placements, but predominantly right now, as I just said, been working with the funding, do credit repair, which is totally different from your normal credit repair because of what I can help do. I do business funding, I do debt securitization. Obviously, I help investors with whether it's rehabs, I have contractors, I can help place the tenants, I can help get the property cleaned. One-stop shop,
You
essentially.
are essentially a one-stop shop. I was just about to say, like anything from start to finish, from
Yes,
acquiring the property, fix it up, place the
yes.
tenant, everything. Well, how can people find you? What's the best way to reach
Uh,
out to you?
You can reach me on Instagram, Buchanan Biz Enterprises. My other name is Balboa, New York, Baltimore. So BALBOA_NY_be more. My website is buchananbiz.com. You can get onto my site and check things out. So I have a bunch of new things coming, options for like AI. This AI stuff is amazing. But any help, if you look on my Instagrams, you'll see some of the projects that I'm currently working on. I'll be putting up new videos and pictures for some of the projects. Like one project we had held up for like 4 months. So we finally got the basement dug out and kind of just looking forward. So I'll start posting stuff like that again. So reach out to me anytime. I'm willing to help. I love helping anything in real estate, as y'all can see. And I would love to further the conversation.
Awesome. I love your energy. I love your mission. And I love your passion to help people and all that. So thank you so much for coming to our podcast today.
Thank you for having me. I greatly appreciate it. It was exciting and I look forward to coming back again. So.